So it's really important then as a leader that I not only rethink, is the purpose strong enough? Will it unite people? Who are we not? And what's our common other that I'd like to focus my teams around so they don't go make their own other, which could be quite dangerous for us.
The question is from Thinking Focus.
Hello, I'm Richard from Thinking Focus.
Hi, and I'm Paul from Thinking Focus.
And the question today is, how can I keep people united?
The question is from Thinking Focus, a podcast about how we sometimes get in our own way and what we can do about it.
Hey, this is the purpose one we said we'd do last time, isn't it?
Yeah, well, on the last podcast, if you were here, we decided actually we should do one about purpose and what purpose is all about. But what we did is we got rid of Rob, so it's just me and Paul today.
Well, yeah, because it's about purpose and Rob's all about crisis. So
yeah, it feels like we're managing a crisis with Rob, doesn't it, permanently? So we were talking about actually in the last one, should all change be done quickly, because a lot of that has happened. And one of the things we talked about was yes, it can be done quickly, but what happens when the crisis is over? What is it that keeps people moving forward? What unites people?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of sort of understanding that speed of change and progression of change is sort of almost directly linked to how much we feel about it and how we associate with what's going on. And that's about purpose and who we are and how we associate with it. And crisis does that to us really quickly, but it doesn't last. So if you want to keep this going, you need to swap the crisis out pretty quickly for some kind of new type of purpose.
And, lots of teams, lots of organizations will already have a vision, won't they? So we do a lot of work with teams that are creating a new vision and talking about purpose, but lots of them have already got it. So what's wrong with just picking that one up and carrying on with it then? I think for me, it's kind of, and it may be just a moment in time that we're at in this kind of COVID world, but the old purpose probably isn't strong enough to replace what's just happened. It doesn't feel big enough to get me back and motivated and moving at speed again. Doesn't feel as urgent?
It doesn't feel as urgent, doesn't feel as connected. And let's be fair, for most organisations, the bigger purpose that existed was kind of like, it was okay, but was everybody really that connected to it? Probably.
Yeah.
It was enough to kind of drive us in the right direction. But most people were like, well, I kind of like it here, and I don't fully not agree with what the purpose is. That's good enough for me. So I think there's some kind of interim type thing.
You went Aussie then.
Yeah, some kind of interim thing that I think is needed because the old plan isn't quite fit for purpose at the moment. It feels too abstract and too distant, and the danger is if we just go back to what the purpose was before.
Yeah, is it enough?
Yeah, and you can see this. People are going to chuck things in the long grass. There's no urgency or momentum. The current purpose and plan is built around the changes needed for COVID, and that was very strong, but is now dying off. It's not as compelling or as urgent as it was because we've normalized it. And so you kind of go, well, I can't go back to the old one. The current one's not really where I want to be. So in essence, we have no choice but to kind of go, how do we define a new purpose, which might just be a stepping stone back to the old one, but is sort of shorter term and more focused around where we are today. That's kind of how it feels to me.
There's also a key point in here as well about uniting. We were all united against COVID.
Yeah.
Are we all united to this new purpose that we try and create for the team or the business, whether it's an interim one or whether it's refreshing an older one? But what about what we're not? What about what we're working against to overcome? What about that? Because it's as important for us in terms of our identity, isn't it? To not just say what we are, but what we're not.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've kind of got to the heart of sort of identity theory here about I understand who I am really by understanding two things. I kind of understand the groups that I associate with. So the causes, I associate with psychology, for instance, because I'm a psychologist, and but I also associate with other things. So I associate with certain types of music because I like that kind of music, and I associate with tech because I used to be a techie person. So they are the groups I belong to, but there are groups I'm clearly not as well, and that helps me understand who I am.
So from a business purpose point of view, then, what we're talking about here is perhaps identifying what we're working against. Who we're not, what's that all about? Because actually, we were united against COVID, weren't we? So what are we working against now?
We need both sides of it. You can't just have an against.
You need what are you for?
So I, to unite people as a leader, to bring a group of people together and unite them. What I'm trying to do is create a group identity. I'm creating something that we are all for. Yeah. And ideally something that we're not, so an other that we're against.
So that other could be a competitor, for example?
It could be. I mean, when you talk to people about some of this stuff, what's really interesting is if you as a leader create the other that's too abstract, and by abstract I mean too difficult for the people around you to fully understand and unite against, they won't buy it as the other. And so sometimes competitors, because you kind of, if you're selling, particularly if you're in sales, you kind of know that you have competitors. You may never meet them in reality.
No, and it always fascinates me when we work with organisations and they say, oh, well, at our competitor, we know that they're doing X, Y, and Z. And you think, how do you know? How do you know that? Yeah. Unless you've got a mole, which, sometimes there might be a mate or something that works there and they're telling you things. But how do you really know that? You're just reading what's in the paper. And if you're reading what's in the paper or in the industry press, that's only what they want you to know. Yeah. So that could be too abstract.
So you go, what? Oh, and if you make it too abstract, the danger is, because people do like another, we do like to understand who we are by working out who we're not, then I'll go and find my own. I'm going to find things that are familiar to me that I understand to be against.
So there's a danger here then that we've created. Let's just imagine that we've got a team, we've created a new purpose, whether it be interim or longer term, we've done that. But what if we start to unite against another part of our own business? What if we start to say, actually, there's a bit of something going on between us and customer service, or between another region or something? Because that's entirely possible then, isn't it?
Yeah, we see that all the time. I can think of a number of organizations where I have worked or we have worked with, where you could basically go, hey, the salespeople don't like the service people, and the service people are against the salespeople. And they see this group as the other. So they start identifying traits to it. So you go in and you talk to service people and they'll go, but all the salespeople here are so, and you can imagine the adjectives they use. And in the same way as the salespeople will go, the service people don't want to own things or don't want to do, and none of that's actually true. That's othering. That's creating a group and going, well, we're sales. And the way I know I'm sales is because I'm not service. Or we're service, we're the ones that care about customers. And the way I know about that is because I'm not one of those kind of salespeople who's all in it for themselves. And that's not helpful, because the reality is, if you're the customer, you don't care about any of that. You just kind of want the product and you want it to work, and you want the post-sales support to work, and you want the invoice to turn up on time, and probably
all to work.
You the whole thing. That's what you're buying into. So I think as leaders, you kind of have to remember, if you haven't helped people identify the other, the chances are they're going to do it for themselves, and they're probably going to pick something they know, which is probably something inside the organization.
So it's really important then, as a leader, that I not only rethink, is the purpose strong enough? Will it unite people? So I need to rethink that. It's really important that I also then think about, so who are we not, and what's our common other that I'd like to focus my teams around, so they don't go make their own other, which could be quite dangerous for us.
Yeah, and I think, and othering is a dangerous thing in its own right, because it's really easy then, and there's lots of cases of this in society where you can see people have created these artificial differences, and then people start to believe them. So I am better than this person because, and you go, that's none of that's true. That's just artificial creations. But you can do it also quite safely, because you can pick groups and kind of get them to compete. So I think back to when I was running sales groups, for instance, and actually the biggest common enemy you had were the other sales teams, and it wasn't that I hated them, I didn't want to be like them, but actually we were trying to beat that sales team over there to the number one position.
Yeah,
and as long as you can keep it healthy, that's a really respectful thing. But then you just have to be careful, because if I use the analogy of football teams, it can become unhealthy, where you go, actually, we're not common football players. There's a great piece of research, actually, that I love, that I believe was done at Manchester, but if I've got the university wrong, I apologise. And they were looking at a football association. And basically what they're doing is they had a group of people that they run the experiment on, and on the walk to a particular place where they think the experiment's going to happen, the experiment happens to them as they're walking, and they're using football fans. And I'm going to guess the team, but it was either Manchester United or Liverpool. You'll work out why I think it's one of those two teams in a second. Yeah. And they said, so before you went on this walk, they were talking about your football club and your association with football. And then while on the walk, somebody would fall over in front of you. And sometimes they would be wearing your club shirt and sometimes they wouldn't. And they were watching the reaction. And what we find is that if you're a Manchester United fan and a person in a Manchester United shirt falls over in front of you, because they're part of your group, because you're
more likely to pick them up.
To help. What was really interesting is that they then noticed that if the person was in a red T-shirt, you're slightly more likely to help than a normal person, because there's that colour association and an association with the team.
But if they were in a Liverpool shirt, they were less likely to help.
But they then did it again, and instead of talking to you about your club, they talked to you about football supporters. And then what they found was, if you go out with this view of I'm a football supporter,
so you're in that group,
then actually anybody in a football shirt, you're more likely to help, because they're like you.
And we see this happening when we travel abroad, don't we?
Yeah.
You might become friends with somebody on holiday, basically, for me, for example, just because they're from Yorkshire, not necessarily because we've got anything else in common. And perhaps you get back from holiday and realise you never had anything in common with them anyway, and you never see them again.
I know. I always just assumed that everybody from Yorkshire got on and talked to each other. That's all what it felt like.
It was a bad example, because we do, and we generally don't like talking to people from your part of the world either.
Yeah, but I get
it's not like there's not a lot I can do about that. But
it's exactly the same thing.
That othering is quite interesting, isn't it?
But it's interesting there, because you got both sides of it. You had I'm from Yorkshire. What do I belong to? I am this. And I'm from Yorkshire sounds a bit twee, but there is a set of values that kind of people associate to that, because it's a fixed identity and a grouping. And if you want to go, I'm from Yorkshire, that means something.
Yeah. And you're signing up to what it means.
Yeah.
And I suppose what you said before strikes a chord, because if as a leader you want to try and create another, you've got to do it in a healthy way.
You've got to.
Because if you use the football example, then obviously football becomes very tribal.
Yep.
And can be quite unhealthy and quite nasty sometimes in people's opinions about what a rival team stands for or who they are and all that sort of stuff. What we're not advocating any of that here.
No,
what we're talking about is creating another. So you're just clear about what it is that you want.
Why I think you shouldn't do this without a strong identity of who we are first. So I think one of the challenges you see in football is you can almost get to the point where the thing about my club, it's not that my club wins that's important, it's that you lose that's important to me. And then that's gone too far. So it's all about the other and not about who we are. As leaders in business, what we're trying to do is bind a group together by saying, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is I hate this expression, but I can't think of a better one, the ripple on the universe that we're trying to create.
Yep. Well,
but we're not that.
So there's actually a good argument here as well when looking at purpose. If you're re-looking at that, is to re-look at the values that you have for your team.
Yeah.
To re-look at the values you have as an organisation. Are they still relevant? Because do they represent us in the right way then?
Because the ultimate purpose is people taking it on board and going, I believe in that. And so it ceases to be purpose to that individual. It becomes identity. And that's what we're trying to do as leaders. We're trying to bind a group in a common identity by going, I'm going to help you understand who you are together and what we're going to achieve together. But I'm also going to help you understand what we're against and what we're not, so that we have a really clear understanding. And when you create that strong identity and joint purpose, then people become united, and you can then drive change through, and you can do more with that group because the group is as of one and are trying to do something together. So it's a leadership skill.
So perhaps final point on this is there'll be a number of leaders out there, maybe a number of them listening to this, that say, oh, really? I've got to do that? I haven't got time to do that. I just want to crack on again. We've lost enough time already. Let's crack on. But actually what we're saying here is, by not taking this step and not thinking about this, and this might not have to be a massive piece of work, but by not thinking about this, you could in fact lose time and lose effectiveness.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. That okay, it will feel quicker in the first step, and then everything else will feel harder because you haven't taken the group of people with you. And, unless you're, running a really tiny business, and we work in a tiny business now. We've all come from bigger businesses. We work in a tiny business. Even with 6 people, you have to take everybody on the journey. So unless you want to work on your own and do your own thing, you don't really have a choice as a leader. You've got to bind people in a common identity and take them on the journey with you. That is the job. That's what leadership's about.
Thank you, Paul.
Thinking Focus works with teams and business units in organizations around the world, helping them achieve breakthroughs by enabling them to think differently. To find out more about our work and how we could help your organization, go to www.thinkingfocus.com.